Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Agnieszka Tkaczyńska, and it's my pleasure to represent the Polish cosmetics industry in front of you today. I was invited to the panel to raise a very important topic for all of us, which is sustainable development. For the purposes of this lecture, I'll try to focus on cosmetics industry in my country, which is not easy because all industries overlap constantly on this issue. I will also say a few words about ecodesign, which is very important to me due to my profession, and at the same time related to the idea of the main topic. In private, I'm an allergic victim of the industry I represent, which prompted me to create ecological brands. I'm also a vegan by definition, sinning sometimes, and a great fan of nature and ecology. However, I'm far from being eco-terrorist or vegan terrorist in any form. I believe that every person, company and country has a choice. It is our duty to show others what kind of world we live in and what are or will be the consequences of our actions. Before I go on, the Polish cosmetics industry is today one of the largest in Europe. We are in the 13th position among the largest exporters of cosmetics in the world. In Cosmoprof Bologna, for example, we are the 5th power among exhibitors. In cosmetics, we are undeniably great. With the mines, the situation is worse. I recently found out that the Polish government has just signed an agreement with the miners, and we will close our last mine in 2049. What a big success. Of course, it's good, because there could be no agreement at all. Here, we have to wonder what could happen in 50 years. In past 30 years, mobile phone usage has spread, which has changed our world completely. Internet, smartphones fused to our hands, the world has shrunk. We have online exhibitions, for example. Let's look at our private lives. We've grown up, excluding men, of course, and maybe we've even grown old. We've started families and companies. Perhaps we've lost everything and built it all over again. How many times have we started again over past 30 years? At the same time, I'm amazed and terrified about what the future can bring in the next 30 years. Scientifically based, in 2050, the temperature in large metropolises will increase by 6.5 to 7.8 degrees Celsius. This means that London will change its climate into Barcelona, and my capital, Warsaw, becomes Tbilisi. Sounds good? Not really. Around 55% the world's population will be exposed to deadly conditions for 20 days a year beyond the threshold of human survival, and the most significant change will be noticeable in the European climate. So I really don't know who will survive in these mines. One thing is for sure, we may not have electricity in 2049, but we will be definitely an even greater power in the production of cosmetics, as Polish exports increase every year by an average of 25%. Because of all that, I'm glad that I represent my industry, the one that does overmightily more in terms of sustainable development than, for example, the energy industry in my country. Although I still have the impression that we are hoping against hope and fighting with the windmills like Don Quixote. Personally, I've always believed that united we stand, cooperation builds, and fighting destroys. That's why I'm glad that so many Polish companies from my industry agreed to cooperate with me on the topic of this lecture. Today, I would like to speak in the name of each of them, and it's crucial to me that this lecture be a reliable reflection of the whole industry, and not just my subjective opinion about the concept. So, what is sustainable development? The term comes originally from forestry and means that only the same numbers of trees can be cut as can be grown in their place, so that the forest can always regenerate. In its present sense, sustainable development is an idea that was defined for the first time in the past millennium in 1987. It assumes that socio-economic development of contemporary societies will meet all their needs and at the same time does not reduce the chances and possibilities of meeting these needs for future generations. Now, let's translate it into business language. The idea of sustainable development is that societies should live on interest on capital and not use capital. Simple. The first of 27 principles adopted at the United Nations Conference in Rio in 1992 is: human beings are at the center of concerns for sustainable development. They're entitled to a healthy and productive life in harmony with nature. It's easy to agree, and it's more difficult to implement the plan. Can one nation achieve it on its own? No. A global agreement is essential. At this point, I must say that I'm really proud that the principle of sustainable development was included in the Polish Constitution in 1997, already 5 years after conference in Rio. The European Union, for example, adopted it as a strategy only in 2001, and in 2009, sustainable development officially became one of the long-term goals of the European Union. More and more, that is also replaced by the concept of eco-development. In everyday language, this term is often used as a synonym for pro-ecological behavior. In business circles, it equals success and innovation. So everyone wants to connect to it and sometimes mimic certain behaviors, like fake behaviors. We call it greenwashing, and we don't like that. Regardless of how we look at the problem, the main point is that the world should be a place where every living being, not only humans, will be able to maintain its dignity. Develop rational economic solutions that will reduce the consumption of natural resources and stop environmental contamination in order to save natural ecosystems. The clue should be. What immediately comes to my mind is the fantastic 2016 BBC documentary, Drowning in Plastic, that personally blew my mind. At the time, I was sitting on a plane on some terribly long trip, and the meal was being served. I looked at my tray. Everything, absolutely everything, was in plastic or in foil. Salad, main course, muffin, cookie. I had more plastic on a tray than food. I looked around. Each passenger had the same tray full of plastic and foil in his hand. I imagined how many such planes were in there at the moment all over the world and how many such trays were being used right then. I thought, the airlines don't seem to get along with dolphins. The film was generally prepared in rather optimistic tone, filled with hope, showing enormous changes and efforts. But it also showed the enormity of the catastrophe and above all its great scale. In my opinion, this is something that should be shown to children in schools as a compulsory lesson. This is something that every inhabitant of Earth should watch. This film even forces us to have an internal need for change. It touched me so deeply that ever since then, when I go to the store and I looked at the products I've chosen, I felt really sick to see how much plastic I took home with me, and I felt this tormenting inner compulsion to change it. I would highly recommend this documentary. It gives 1,000 times more insights than hours of lectures on sustainable development. Theoretically, we all have beautiful assumptions, but what do we do with them? Us? Me? Me as a person? Me as a business owner? My community? My country? As I said at the beginning, I asked Polish cosmetics producers to tell me what sustainable development means to them. How do they understand the term? What do they do to make the world a better place? At this point, I have to mention a few companies that inspire me, and in some respects I would like to be like them. For example, Yope, a producer of absolutely fantastic organic soaps that bring me delight every day. Yope has implemented a podium-worthy project. They created filling stations for their products. This is something really innovative, and huge brands could learn from them. And yet, it is just a Polish company that does not have unlimited capital as large as concerns. Yope is a company that also revolutionized the detergents market by introducing ecological versions of household cleaning products to the market. Today, they are taking the world by storm by proving they can manage not only to run a successful business, but also to take care of the planet, for example, by helping bees. And other companies, I have no time to list them all, use cardboard and glass packaging. Make Me Bio, for example, organize zero waste actions, which is collecting their empty glass jars for another use. What can I say about them? Competition? No. These are companies with whom, from the beginning, I've had the pleasure to co-create the market of eco-cosmetics and eco-detergents in Poland. These are companies that deal with the same everyday problems as I do and are looking for similar solutions. When I was creating my first cosmetic brand, I made an assumption: ecology that everyone can afford. I wanted to show that everyone can have it, not only the rich ones. Then a wall arose in front of me, and it was written packaging on it. Everything cheap is obviously packed in plastic. Glass is too expensive for a mid-range beauty brand. Cardboard, not for moisture-absorbing products. My fantastic business partner and I started looking for a cheap alternative to plastic, or any alternatives, but we were finding nothing. After all, there were a lot of technologies for the production of biodegradable and compostable packaging. Despite this, nobody or hardly anyone was using it. Then a bizarre idea arose in my head: to create a completely passive factory using almost exclusively renewable energy sources, which would produce biodegradable and compostable packaging, and the best part, finally, will compost them all. With madness in our eyes, we started traveling around Poland to talk with scientists and buy patents. We had a great idea how to significantly reduce the raw material cost, so the price wasn't as huge problem as it seemed at the beginning. We wrote a fantastic business plan with a message: it must work. We were so proud, and we didn't find an investor. We failed to getting funding too. We were absolutely shocked. How come? After all, everyone knows that this is the future, that plastic should be eliminated. At that time, it seemed obvious only to us. We were a bit ahead of the time. We wanted to go farther. It was our sustainable development. But at the time, we were forced to put our brilliant project in a drawer to collect dust. Like most manufacturers in our industry, we fight against plastic. This is the part of my job that I honestly hate. However, the economy and supply force industry to stick with plastic. Meanwhile, new legal scarecrows are constantly emerging and saying, you will pay more. On the one hand, as a human, I jump with joy. And on the other, as a small business owner, I'm deeply worried. Like most representatives of the segment of small and medium enterprises, we are concerned about what it will be like. The Polish companies I mentioned use cardboard and glass packaging, opening refill stations, organize zero-waste actions, which of course is a model to follow. But the needs of the market as a whole are greater and still unsatisfied. A few words about the trends now. A lot of organic and vegan brands have been created all over the world in the last years. Even large corporations have started to launch lines of eco and vegan products. It could be considered as a global trend, but this is just a trend. I think people awaken consciousness. Maybe an ordinary person does not know what sustainable development is, but he feels under his skin that the world is not going in the right direction and is intuitively striving for change. I will use a few data here. The most important, in my opinion, is the underestimation of the market. In just 1 decade, the total value of the organic food market in the world has tripled, and only until 2011, when the real boom had just begun. According to the report presented at BioFach in 2016, the value of the global organic market in the world in years 2000-2015, we are talking not only about food right now, increased by 355%. When it comes to the cosmetics and detergents market, the growth rate is double-digit, and this trend is constantly growing. In Germany alone, this is a steady increase of 10% per year. In recent years, organic beauty products and household chemicals have become one of the main directions in the development of the whole industry in the world. In many European countries, this segment is considered immune to economic disruptions, also during the current pandemic situation. Even in the years 2009-2013, very difficult for retail trade, no declines were recorded in Western Europe. On the contrary, the double-digit sales dynamics was maintained. Coming back to Poland, major domestics in the organic sector record a 20 to 50 increase in production every year. It is worth noting here that the underestimation of the organic food market in Poland in just 4 months in 2017 was 30%. Also, veganism and vegetarianism cannot be seen as a temporary trend these days. It is no longer a fashion, but a generally accepted lifestyle with a very strong expansion. This attitude has become the natural result of increase of public awareness, taking care of health, ethical aspects, and concern for the natural environment. Data shared by research company Innova Market Insights shows that since 2011, the number of vegetarian products on a global scale has increased by 63%, and every 10th product introduced to the European market was labeled as vegetarian. Every 10th. It's because the number of vegans still increased. For example, in just 10 years in the British Isles has increased by 360%. Germany remains the leader, where the share of the population on a meat-free diet reaches 10%. That huge interest in vegan products we can owe the millennial generations. Over the next 10 years, they will determine about 75% of the active population. Poland is looking very interesting against this background, especially Warsaw. The capital of Poland was in the 3rd place in the ranking of the most vegan cities in the world, after Berlin and LA, and ahead of New York City and London. So, is it really a fashion, temporary trend? Sustainable development inevitably enters our homes with the growing awareness of people and entire societies. It is the consumers who show us what they do expect, and the market, in this case cosmetics industry, must respond to these needs, what we all do willingly, especially producers in the eco and bio sector, because each of these companies, like my own, grew out of our needs and beliefs. It should be added here that the structure of the Polish market is quite specific. It could be described as dispersed in smaller producers. In this regard, it is like the Italian market, and maybe a little bit like the Spanish one. In case of other countries, especially European ones, market sale is rather concentrated in hands of a big global concerns. As a result, many new cosmetic brands are still being created in Poland, which, in the line with current market trends and consumer needs, mainly focus on providing organic and vegan products. These companies that have built their brand in the pro-environmental direction implement various pro-ecological activities, in this way increasing their competitiveness. The limitation, however, is often a modest budget and growing concerns about introduced regulations, for example, extended producer responsibility. On the other hand, big concerns do not have the same fear as small businesses about introduced regulations. They operate with specialized departments, and as well, they do function in native markets where the regulations already exist, for example, on very restricted Scandinavia. It is easier for them because of the scale. They also have budgets, but do they use them wisely? It is known that the principles of sustainable development cannot be introduced by one country, so that it brings the benefits to the future generations. Let's reduce the scale. Is the one enterprise able to do something, even the biggest one? No. Cooperate work and joint actions are needed. Actions which will be independent of so-called competitive struggle. Because it's not only concerning us, it's regarding about those who will succeed us and derive what we leave behind. Similarly, one industry, no matter is it food or cosmetics, is not able to do anything on its own. Here I come back for a moment for abandoned project of eco-packaging factory and its essential part, industrial composters. In Poland, even if everyone would like to use compostable packaging, it will be nothing to do with this waste. In my opinion, the time has come when also eco-design as a concept is changing. Currently, companies are trying to outdo each other in creating packaging that looks eco and raw, often, unfortunately, misleading consumers. We've all heard about greenwashing. Here again, the great creativity of Polish companies should be prized. Interesting, sometimes even strange graphics on labels as a presentation of relationship between the product and the nature. Beautiful cardboard and glass jars, all with great taste worthy of word designers. Color codes corresponding with nature, even wood labels are made. Every brand wants to stand out. Every brand wants to show their pro-ecological attitude by their design. Thinking like this, everything we thought about eco-design, all of our creativeness and efforts turns out to be irrelevant when we shift our thinking to a higher good, when we decide to introduce sustainable development for real. Now I'm going to say something that will overturn or should overturn our view. Just close your eyes and try to imagine that we are at the beginning of our journey. Now, imagine that we all have the same packaging, identical. But for example, they are under the embrace of the nationwide deposit system. You might think, wow, hold your horses. We will not stand out? We won't be able to have these beautiful packages? I will say, we will stand out. We will show everyone, yes, we really are eco. We really want to bring a change to the world. What we do is a result from our internal needs and beliefs. Everyone can say, great concerns will destroy us. I will say, concerns will help us. Massive change requires massive action. Without their big scale, there will be no hope of success. Of course, the deposit system is just one of the ways that can make total overturn not only in eco-design, but in the whole packaging industry. From the other hand, industrial composters is a completely different approach. Now imagine that everyone is using a single type of compostable material for their packaging and the government or governments support such waste. While looking at the present world, could we go this way? Then, what will confirm our mission? That what we call now eco-design or our real engagement? Then we will stay in solidarity with ourselves and with the world around us. Doesn't that sound wonderful? So, ladies and gentlemen, let's just do it. Thank you for your attention.